I think it's important that we bring on maybe one of the first people from a local level that was one of the strongest voices, and I mean that in every way possible. Dina, how are you, Dina?
I'm good. I'm good. I almost cried again watching that. I can't watch that clip without getting goosebumps still to this day, and almost starting to cry. Like, it was so, you had to physically be down there to know the power, to the togetherness, the fight that everybody was in. It was just, I don't think I'm ever going to see that again in my lifetime.
Yeah, it was something. And for those who may not remember, one of my first visits to the Triangle of Terror there in Dedham, I was downstairs in the Registry of Deeds. Why? Because they have a very nice public restroom. So I was down there, and every time I'd been in there a few times because I have a thimble bladder. So I'd been down there, and I see this gathering in the other room, and this was late February, early March, so still not exactly balmy, right? So when everybody had arrived and there was nothing really going on outside, this group would gather in the basement. And so I was just kind of sneaking in and trying to listen. And then I just said, well, let me just see who wants to speak, and introduce myself. Said, anybody want to say anything? And most everybody was like, look elsewhere. But one person spoke up, and I can't. Oh yeah, it was Dina. And once she started talking, and clearly her thoughts reflected everybody else's thoughts in that room. Then other people popped up. Will the Glairer happened to be in town that day, so I met him then. So Dina, here we are. Obviously, it's still emotional for you. We talked obviously the day of the verdict, and for those who haven't seen the clip where Dina takes over the microphone and starts Nathan.
I was like, screw that Channel 5. How dare that asshole at Channel 5 even get next to me? Like, it was a split-second decision. I'm like, oh, I seen your microphone with the justice on it, and I was like, boom, I just took it and put it right in there.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, because I was late to the fray, and so I'm getting like the back of his head. So we got the audio, and I moved around just a little bit. But what was the relationship you had with Nathan? Because you clearly were close with him.
Well, they in the beginning and during the first trial, they had to fend for themselves as far as like security and stuff like that. And this movement, we stepped up to the plate and try to get them through the media and stuff. So that's how now they know us in our faces. So if we're popping in, into the media to get them, they know to come with us. We're going this way or whatever. And it just happened. But this second trial, the police, all the police, the CAT team, the Mass State Police, the Dedham Police, the bicycle police, there was tons of them. They wanted to build a bridge between the supporters and law enforcement. So that way law enforcement wasn't just, they didn't want to throw gas on any fires. So that's how I ended up stepping up to the plate.
So you were kind of the ombudsman, the liaison between the supporters and the cops at a time in which, there were moments that were not, they were ugly, and obviously
they were ugly. I got a lot of shit for it. And I was just on Will's show, and I was just like, you know what? F you people, because I did something for the greater good of this movement. And that was to end this movement for Karen the way we started it, with no violence. That's a lot there was over 2,000 people down there. And at one point, one section went to go stampede when they started putting the fencing up. I went running down. The police were behind me, but I was screaming, no! And they actually stopped. They actually stopped. And I didn't think, I worked up at Great Woods a couple times. When I was a police matron, I worked up at the compound, which Great Woods is a concert venue. And I would work up there. So it's not like I didn't rummage through crowds before. I did. But this was different because...
A police matron? I'm hearing something new. I didn't know about you. I'm sorry to jump in, Dina. But wow.
I started off at 911, which I liked 911, but the guy that was training me, and he was a bit of a pervert, and so I didn't want to work with him anymore. Later on, a few years later, he actually was indicted and arrested in a sex ring for pornography.
There you go.
But anyways, I went from 911, I went over to become a police matron, and I was a police matron 13, 14 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, good for you. And
it
on
was
that
per
day,
diem, but...
Yeah, but still, that's a very important job.
Yeah.
And on that
So-
day, and I referenced it as a concert a couple of times, 'cause that's what it reminded me of. With the stanchions were there, and people did, they really did charge the street at first.
They did.
And
I
you
was
stopped
screaming.
them, and the stanchions stopped them, but then the cops kind of bent and said, "Okay, they will close that half of the road," and it was fine. That was the closest that I ever noticed it getting to, sort of unruly. The only time.
Yeah, and the cops were funny because when we walked back over to the original corner, when where we were staying most of the time, they were like, "Jesus Christ, Dina, we stayed back and let you handle it." Like they were laughing. I was like, "No," because a lot of these people I seen every single day, so they wanted it too. They knew Karen's team wanted us to be quiet because we didn't know what Bev would do if everybody was screaming, and to sentence her, for that OUI charge, because there was that was lingering that they, Bev could charge her and give her the full 2.5 years, which would have been horrific if
Would
they
have
did
been
that, because
outrageous.
nobody
No
gets
support
that.
for it,
That
et
would have
cetera.
started a riot.
But you're right, because with all of the shenanigans we saw, who knows? Who knows?
And not only that, is we still, no matter what, you have to be respectful to the O'Keefe family. The O'Keefe family still lost a son, a brother, an uncle, a cousin. They would have had to walk out to 2,000 people. You know what I mean? You can't avoid that with that. I'm glad they went out the back door, but there was a lot of, they thought a lot about everything. And I'll tell you, the crowd was wonderful. It really was, because we're a community. We're a caring community. A lot of new people that came down, which you can tell there was a lot of new people. They didn't like, they get excited. You know what I mean? Like, so one person kissed me on the lips. Like, don't do that, invade space. But
Michael, how dare you?
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
But like I said to you that day, both you and Linda, you guys came down and you did it unbiasedly. Where we everybody in this movement has seen how the media does stuff and edits stuff and doesn't report unbiasedly. Where you came down and you looked at everything. But not only that, is you gave us an opportunity to speak of how we felt, and you didn't edit anything. You promised not to do it, and you did, and you kept your promise. So
we've had you on a number of times. And Michael's been there. He went 14 times. You didn't see that from the mainstream media.
No, not at all. And that's why, like, that whole Mike thing, I saw him in the corner of my eye, and I was like, "Oh no, you're getting in here. You are more important than these assholes that we deal with all the time." And I just, you're lucky
we
I didn't
appreciate
push
that.
Channel 5 down.
We had a very nice coexistence, and we only had one goal going into this: justice. Tell the story, prosecutor, prove your case if you can. Right. And day after day, we would see that the case was horrible.